more now at what is taking place in Georgia. President Biden speaking out once again in support of Major League Baseball, along with other organizations and companies boycotting Georgia's new voting law.
It is reassuring to see that for-profit operations and businesses are speaking up about how these new Jim Crow laws are just antithetical to who we are. It's the best way to deal with this is for Georgia and other states to smarten up. But then there's another group.
These new Jim Crow laws. Former President Trump, meanwhile, is out with a statement that it was, quote, too bad that the law didn't even go further. Florida Senator Marco Rubio asking the Major League Baseball Commissioner, Rob Manfred, if he intends to resign from the Augusta National Golf Club, where the Masters golf tournament begins tomorrow. So far, no answer. Joining me right now is the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp. Governor, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Oh, good morning.
Well, I'm astounded at corporate America getting involved in this fight, even though there are so many falsities here, and hearing the president of the free world extending those falsities, calling it Jim Crow. What do you think is going on here, Governor? What's your assessment?
Well, number one, President Biden's lying to the American people and to our own citizens here in Georgia. I just laughed to myself, Maria, when he's talking about we need to smarten up. I mean, look at his own state of Delaware. They actually call your name out before you go vote in the precinct so people could challenge you. Could you imagine if we had that in our law? I mean, the world would be falling apart right now. He needs to focus on his own state and not worry about Georgia. This bill makes it easy to vote and hard to cheat. We're doing away with the signature match process and implementing voter ID on absentee ballots. We're securing ballot drop boxes that were never in the law before this year. We're making elections officials count continuously until every vote is counted so you don't have disruptions that brings doubt. And, it's just good common sense, election security, making it easy to vote but hard to cheat.
Yeah, and they're talking about making it tough for African Americans to vote. The corporate CEOs are, and there's a lot of conversation about that. Leave it to corporate America to move an event from a state which is 60% white to a state which is 80% white. Atlanta is 52% black. Denver is 10% black. Colorado requires voter ID. How is it possible that these titans of industry didn't even read your new law and just came out and rolled over for the progressive mobs?
Yeah, that's exactly. They folded like a wet dish rag to the cancel culture. I mean, it is woke in real life, and Americans and Georgians should be scared. I mean, what event are they going to come after next? You know, what value that you have, the way that you live your life, are they coming after next? Are they going to come after your small business next? Because that's who's getting screwed here, Maria. It's the small business people that would have profited from the All-Star game, being at Truist Park at the home of the Atlanta Braves. And now they're moving to Colorado. They have 2 days less of early voting than we do. They have a voter ID. You know, President Biden's been talking about how bad voter ID is. He did the pregame for the NCAA championship the other night that was all held in Indiana. That's the birthplace of photo ID. That's where the first lawsuit was upheld that says it's okay to have a voter ID. Most Americans and most Georgians support this. This is so hypocritical. And to your question, it's amazing that CEOs that have government affairs teams that knew what was in this bill, that were fine with it, they didn't even bother to check with them because they got pressured from the woke.
I mean, what's wrong with having a voter ID? It's just ridiculous to push back against that. And you just mentioned, I think there's a latest study out that says 70+% of the African-American community believes that voter IDs should be used. Governor, I want to go back to the beginning of this. Tell us why you felt the need to change any law in Georgia. Why did you feel the need to come up with this new law in the first place? Talk to us about that.
Well, that's a great question. And look, it wasn't just me. We held strong majorities in the General Assembly in Georgia in November. Speaker Ralston put a committee together based on a lot of things that we had seen, that legislators, myself and others had heard, post-election, also in the runoff, things that candidates like Senator Perdue and Senator Loeffler had told us, and a lot of other things. And so the General Assembly responded to that, and they talked to local elections officials. And the local elections officials told them some of the problems. I mean, we had a 351% increase in absentee ballots by mail, and the signature match process just did not work very well. You can't take the time to really scrutinize that. It's antiquated. It takes a long time to process, a long time to count. And that's the reason we put the voter ID on there, to make it more secure and also to speed the process up. Now, the other side, they're not talking about the speeding the process up and making it easier for the county elections officials. The same thing, we did not have ballot boxes before this law in Georgia. So we had to deal with that because that was done by emergency rule by the Secretary of State and the State Election Board. And that's really where the gist of all these things came from.
Yeah, and everybody knows when you go all out on mail-in balloting, you may very well be opening the doors of fraud. The AG, Bill Barr, told me that a year and a half ago. But President Trump is going one step further, saying, you know what, it's not even strong enough. Georgia's election, this is a statement from Donald Trump, Georgia's election reform law is far too weak and soft to ensure real ballot integrity. Election day is supposed to be election day, not election week or not election month. What's your reaction to what the President Trump is saying in response to the new law?
Well, Maria, as I said earlier, the fact is this bill makes it easy to vote and hard to cheat in Georgia. It's Republicans that have, put in places a lot of these things over the years. The General Assembly continues to support that, but they also want them to be secure. But also to deal with mechanical problems that we saw in the election. And that's really what we're doing, whether it's, voters being intimidated or harassed while they're standing in line, and making sure that we have, a clear line in the sand on, when you can do that, when you can't, to make sure that people don't get bothered when they're trying to vote or slow the process up. I mentioned dealing with ballot drop boxes. We expanded accessibility for people to vote in Georgia. The Democrats are attacking us about how bad the bill is, and we're suppressing the vote, and we're racist, and this is Jim Crow 2.0, even though they reserved that domain name weeks before they knew what was in the bill. And that's not what's happening here. This bill makes for secure, accessible, fair elections in Georgia, and every single Republican voted for it.
Yeah, I mean, but the more President Biden talks about it, the more falsities the public is getting, and that's triggering behavior. Do you think President Biden should apologize to the people of Georgia and the American people for you said, lying?
Yeah, well, what President Biden, Stacey Abrams, all these other, CEOs of these companies that are in New York and New Jersey, and former CEOs that are pressuring people like Delta and like Major League Baseball, Coca-Cola and others, they should be truthful with people. They should look at their own damn laws in their own states. They are more restricted than ours are. This is so condescending. And look, this is all a power play, Maria. Look at the long game that the Democrats and Joe Biden, that are playing. This is all about HR1 and SR1. They want a federal takeover of elections in our country. That is an unconstitutional power grab. Our founders set it up for the states to run elections to prevent foreign interference. That's the way the Constitution says, and that's the way it should be. But make no mistake, all this is just trying to pressure these corporations. They'll say, hey, we'll give you a pass on this if you come out and support this federal legislation. And we got to continue to spread the word to the American people. We need to unite and fight back against this.
Well, it's very troubling because I know that H.R. 1 is federalizing elections and should really be called for the politicians so that they stay in power, not for the people. That is really more dirty tricks. Governor, I want to move on to breaking news on the COVID restrictions in your state. But real quick, on that one point, Governor Abbott from Texas said if H.R. 1 passes, he will move Election Day. So that Texas is not involved in this federalizing of elections. Would you consider doing the same in Georgia?
Boy, I hadn't seen that. I appreciate Governor Abbott. You know, he's taking a strong stand as long as with a lot of other people like Senator Cotton and Senator Rubio and a lot of other folks. So I'll have to look at that, but that's an interesting idea.
Okay, real quick on the breaking news of the day, COVID restrictions opening up in your state. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we're excited. Look, our numbers are down. We've been trending that way for a long time. Our vaccine deployment's going very well. We've targeted our seniors and the medically fragile. Those are the folks that end up in the hospital or have a bad outcome from COVID. So that has absolutely worked. Hospitalizations are down. Our economy, Maria, as you know, has been mostly open for, about a year now. And we are doing very well economically, but it's time to open up the rest of our sectors that have been struggling. So our restaurants are going back to full capacity, opening up a lot of other things. You know, sporting events and other things have a lot of flexibility to do pretty much whatever they want. They can certainly minimize capacity, but they don't have to. And so we're in a good spot. We're moving toward, you know, rebuilding this American economy and Georgia economy that's one of the best in the country, and we got to keep it rolling.
Well, amen to that, Governor. Best wishes on that. We'll talk soon. We appreciate you joining me this morning. Thank you, sir.